from the heart of the city too busy to hate. A progressive voice making too much sense for corporate media's comfort. This is The Ron Show, where we the people come first. Here's your host, Ron Roberts.
Hello and thank you for listening. Weekdays 8 a.m., 4 p.m. on Georgia Now, 11 p.m. Progressive Voice of you. Tune in wherever you podcast. We have so much to get to. Obviously, election results from last night. We'll pour through those. We're heading into a special session. We've got to, I think, look back a little bit at the Brian Kemp legacy, the operation that might be the Brian Kemp influence machine. That machine may not have enough lubricants for it to continue operating. Like, seriously, his influence is what? He made a wild endorsement of a not political candidate who had a losing football record. By the way, Derek Dooley is now under 500, both as a college football head coach and as a candidate. And then, of course, the 11th hour endorsement of Burt Jones, which I've said for days now, like, seemed like a backhanded endorsement. Why did you wait so late to do that? Did you think you were going to somehow put Burt over the top? Was that just a calculated gambit on your part at the last minute, thinking, I think I kind of want to predict the winner, but I also want to look like I'm savvy enough and have the prowess to push someone over the top? Well, that did not work. And Brian Kemp now, on the way out the door as a governor in this state, has only so much time left on the clock where he'll be able to wield some influence. And we have to talk about the General Assembly special session coming up, the brunt of which he called in the aftermath of the Supreme Court giving license to racial gerrymandering, and he may not even get those new maps. We'll get into all that. Rick Jackson v. Keisha Lance Bottoms, Mike Collins v. John Ossoff. I happen to think that the result of both of those races last night is kind of good for the Georgia Democratic Party. The Rick Jackson part, I know people are scared, all that money, blah, blah, blah. I get it. First thing I want to do, however, is talk to one of the primary runoff winners of the night last night, who said that first thing she had to do this morning was get up and make dad breakfast. How long have you been doing that? You've been making dad breakfast probably since you were a kid, haven't you?
No, he used to make me breakfast. And now it's changed. And so, you know, he knows I like my cream of wheat lumpy and my grits creamy.
Okay, she likes the grits creamy, the cream of wheat lumpy. I'll keep that in mind. Amanda Hollowell joins us, the Democratic congressional nominee now for Georgia's 1st congressional district. Congratulations. How's that feel?
It feels amazing. You know, what do they say? Make a plan, execute the plan. Well, and that's what we did.
I was going to say, this is not something that is all that unusual for you to do that, to make a plan and then execute the plan. But you've actually sort of, like our guest yesterday, you've worked a little bit more behind the scenes, and now you're front-facing in a campaign. For those that don't know, Amanda is a political strategist, chief of campaigns at Color of Change. That's the nation's largest online racial justice organization. I can't imagine at all what compelled you to jump into the ring and run for office this cycle, except for maybe, I don't know, all the things that matter to you as someone who worked at Color of Change. Talk a little bit about what spurred your interest into even getting in the race.
You know, I'm a firm believer. I don't want to waste people's dollars. And so when we found out over the summer that Buddy Carter put his name on the retirement list and he was pursuing a run, I was like, you know, if there's any time, it's now.
Yeah.
And so, you know, we really ran the numbers, what it looks like. We do understand, you know, name recognition is big in this area. But what's even bigger is that folks feel the void, they feel the pain, and they wanted somebody to come with solutions and putting them first.
So let's do this number running thing because, you know, obviously you don't sound like somebody that wants to run for a congressional seat unless you believe you can win. And Georgia's 1st congressional district is a red district. So what's the pathway to winning?
The pathway to winning is investing in people. And, you know, I'm not going to be tied down by big words and you know, party lines and colors. What I'm going to be tied down is that we're in an economic crisis. Inflation's at 4.2%. I'm African American or Black. Our unemployment across the country is at 7.2%. In Georgia, it's at 5%. You know, we are looking at a poverty rate around 45% for folks in the 1st congressional district. And so what people are concerned about is kitchen table issues. They're concerned about how we're paying our mortgage or our rent. You know, the showing up at the pharmacy and your prescription costs $40 more than what it did before. And really speaking to those folks on fixed incomes and those folks who've actually invested well in retirement and now are at risk.
It's still an R plus 24 district, and so that's a lot of ground to make up. And obviously, over the next few months, I know that your plan is to make that ground up. And that message, the economic anxiety message, I think resonates with folks in the Republican Party, the Democratic Party, obviously, and it's the independents. Are there enough independents for you in the 1st Congressional District to overcome that kind of deficit?
Absolutely. The numbers that were speaking out to me that made the most sense was it was a lot of folks showed up to vote, but even more folks stayed home.
Yeah.
And those folks who stayed home were in that 18 to 45. I am a little bit over 45, and my son came on this campaign with me, and him and his friends, and they were like our real life focus group of watching 24-year-olds and how they engage politically and what they're thinking about. And, folks, he was very intentional in making sure I talked with him and not at him. Right. And when he was sending text messages to his friends, we learned in real time. Folks, these folks didn't even know where to go vote because we send out so much information and do no follow up.
Yeah, no, that's the thing about running a campaign, especially at the congressional level. I worked on a couple of them in South Carolina myself. You are literally explaining to, you're having to lead the horses to the water sometimes, like almost literally handing the horse to the water so that they know where the water is to drink. It is a lot. It's like being a mom.
It is like being a mom, and you got to have patience.
Yes.
You have to have patience. You got to understand their point of view. I remember, someone asked me what was my concern in the primary, and I said the ballot is 2 pages.
Yeah.
And they were like, really? And I said, and most folks don't know to scroll down on that computer, and you can't go ask for help. And I said, then there was our folks who like to do mail-in ballots. That when you printed it out, it was 12.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so it was actually costing people to vote. But and I said, so we need to start there, right? Start at let me tell you what voting looks like.
Yeah.
Let me tell you, you don't have to vote for everyone, or, if you don't understand that thing, like those, there are always some weird, party questions that are layered and, and here are resources you can go look up your ballot that will explain it to you.
Mm-hmm.
We were in, I was in Macy's last night, and we were asking, the cashiers there, did you guys go vote? It was 3 women.
Yeah.
2 of them said no, and one of them said, I did. And I said, did you vote for me? She said, I didn't know your name, so I just voted for the name I knew.
And that's what's deciding elections in the country. That's what's so scary, honestly. No offense to the Macy's counter, but that's. Did she at least know? Did she know your name? Was it your name that she knew?
No.
Yeah, and I mean that's no fault of yours. I mean that's just
none. It takes money. It takes money to reach every single person.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what she was excited about was that we were, in her job, and I was like, listen, you get an hour. It's 5:30. Telling the other ladies, I was like, it's 5:30. Y'all get an hour off to go vote. And they were like, really? And I said, yes. I said, you should be planning it with your boss first. But these are all the things that you guys have at your disposal to participate in democracy, and you just don't know.
And listen, I have no idea what someone who works at a Macy's counter makes, but I mean, would you guess it's $20 an hour or less?
Absolutely not.
And that's the thing. It's like you need to go vote so that you can vote for people who would affect that kind of policy. I mean, the minimum wage hasn't changed since 2010. It has been 16 years since the minimum wage has changed. And we all know that the price of everything has changed greatly in the last 16 weeks, let alone 16 years. So,
absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, we got to do what we can to get through to those voters. Here's the thing. When I worked on those congressional campaigns, I was living in the 7th Congressional District of South Carolina, right, which includes Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. I tell people all the time, Myrtle Beach, South Carolina is a little Las Vegas. Not that we have gambling, but it's a huge tourist destination. And in Las Vegas, they have unions that work with the hospitality and food and beverage industry, et cetera, and so on. And that union sways a lot of influence in and around Las Vegas and in Nevada. And in South Carolina, there's no organizing whatsoever. So somebody's got to. I would love to see the SEIU step in to South Carolina and go to Myrtle Beach, for example, and really organize the folks that are working the tables and the hotels and whatnot, and get them to go out and vote, because these candidates can affect their lives and their pocketbooks greatly.
Absolutely. And that's so funny you mentioned Myrtle Beach. My son graduated from Coastal Carolina University.
Hey, go Shants.
For them.
Hey, go Shants, man. I love that. That's awesome. No,
Yes. I'm very familiar with the area.
Yeah, I'm a big Sean's guy. So, well, next time you go to the area, you make sure you talk to anybody who's like waiting tables for you, or if it's somebody's cleaned it, like tell them, like, are you organized? Are people like doing something about that? Because that is a huge part. And again, we're talking about things that a congressional candidate or a congressional campaign shouldn't have to do, but unfortunately, somebody's got to step in and fill that void. I know that you kind of come as a little bit of an outsider into the Democratic Party, someone who has been on the activist side, who has maybe been frustrated with where the Democratic Party has sort of not been able to follow through on some things. So now that you're on the inside and you're a congressional candidate, what are some things that you're going to tell the movers and shakers within the party needs to be done to help you and candidates like you win your race?
I mean, I'm on an election win high, so I want to say watch me work. But yeah. I think anything, I look at those folks, those Maxwell Frosts, those AOCs, those folks. You guys got a trailblazer in Congressional District 4. I forget her name right now. A young lady coming out of nowhere who knows how to use.
Caitlin Geoghegan. Yeah.
Yeah, we're both endorsed by the same organizations. And I look at who is the candidate that is showing up today, and the candidate that's showing up today has been organized in their community. Yeah. The candidate that's showing up today has had a long history of understanding that I have to have a person-to-person call, and I don't mind doing the hard work. Also, the candidate that's showing up today is extremely underfunded.
That is for sure.
And so the fact that we're all winning and showing this progress in our campaigns means that there's something that we're doing right. And just being able to take the moment to hear us and not dictate to us how they think our campaign should run, because we live here. We know, we're in real time doing the surveys. We are real time getting a text from your neighbor like, I didn't like when you said that.
Wait, you got a text from somebody that said they didn't like something you said?
I get a text from 3 voters at least a day.
Wow.
Well, when I was, when I did my call time, when I was calling voters myself, I used my personal cell phone. You used your number.
Oh, rookie mistake.
No, not even, because you know what? People picked up. And so we were running the numbers, and compared to my volunteers, I had a highest pickup rate.
Oh.
My name would come up, they would see it, and they would pick up the phone and have a conversation with me.
If only we had gotten the number of the lady at the Macy's counter.
We did.
Oh, you got her number. All right, good. Yes. See, that's what I'm talking about.
We did, and we know what church she goes to, and I know her voting location.
All right, now that's a little stalkery, but no, I'm kidding.
She offered it.
Oh my god, it's like one of those stalker date movies. But no, that's very cool. But that's how you do it. You go out, and sometimes you can't win over mass numbers of voters all at once. But it's like eating an elephant one bite at a time, right?
Yeah, and I think we have to really have that hard conversation that it's 30 to 40% of this country gets to dictate how we move. And that was another message that resonated with folks who were younger. I said, y'all gonna let 30% of this country tell you how to live your life? And they looked at me and they said, I didn't think about it that way. And I said, see?
1,000%. But I also understand the hard part, the daunting part. Because listen, I mean, I'm somebody who's actively engaged. I do a show 5 days a week that talks politics, and I have to stop what I'm doing to look at that third page of the ballot and go, okay, I don't know who these judges are, and I don't know what they stand for, et cetera. It's like nobody wanted to take a civics class in high school. It was the class that nobody liked, and yet it's kind of like a constant adult continuing education course.
Absolutely. But I tell folks, one of the cool things about the moment is that you actually get to use a cheat sheet when you vote. And so, you get to use somebody else's studies. And folks, one of the things I loved about in the first congressional district, regular people were releasing their own voting guides. Mm-hmm. Right. And they were telling you they're studying, and there was the Solomon voting guide. We didn't have to League of Women Voters, but it was of coastal Georgia. Everyone made this very intentional effort to educate people beforehand. And, even telling folks, you got to go look at your ballot first. You have to. And then I remember, we were doing virtual town halls, and people were like, well, why didn't these judges get challenged? And I was like, and that's the question. Why didn't some of these judges get challenged?
Yeah. Well, but it's like you learned with the lady at the Macy's counter. Sometimes they got to know who the person is, and
exactly.
And I know that takes money, but it also takes hard work and grassroots, activism. You got a lot of organizations that are backing you. Now that you're the congressional candidate in this district, and you hope to close that 24-point gap, I would like to think that
22.
I'm sorry. Okay, sorry. She says 22. I'm going to take her word for it. You'll be able to close that gap with maybe some heavyweights. Maybe Senator Ossoff can come through. Maybe Mayor Bottoms will be able to come through on the top of the ticket. You've got Josh McLaurin now at the top of the ticket as for the lieutenant gubernatorial nominee. There's a lot of heavyweights now that can kind of maybe come through and help you coalesce that base. And you know what? Here's the thing: you don't need them; they need you too.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And it is going to be a partnership.
Mm-hmm.
Josh endorsed me. I endorsed Josh. Josh and I worked. We were traveling in rural Georgia at the same time together. So we would be sitting on panels and in the same room.
Yeah.
Next week, we've got our first rally, June 27th. And that's going to be with Keisha and John. And of course, we'll all be there.
All right.
Right. Yeah. I remember in August, I was asked because they were like, we really want someone who's an activist, but also a caretaker. They had a lot of boxes to check when John was launching when Senator Ossoff was launching his campaign, and they asked me to speak. And so in August, that far back ago, I opened up to share my story as a caretaker for him for his first Savannah rally. And so this is very full circle to, come back as a congressional candidate for the rally with, a united Georgia at the top of the ticket.
That's impressive. That was that kind of the moment for you?
No, I'm telling you, the moment was, I had a friend who worked on the Hill, and they were like, your representative just put himself on the retirement list.
I see. And right then and there, you're like, all right, I think I can do this. I want to take you back to 2024. I mean, that, the election night was just a gut punch for a lot of us. I have to imagine for a woman of color, it was excruciating. Talk a little bit about that and how long it took you to sort of mourn that loss and then get up off the deck.
I mean, we went from, at the time I was a national director, managing director of National Organizing at When We All Vote. So I was crisscrossing the country.
Yeah.
And, I was hearing from folks and the energy was there, but I also saw that the energy was there in the sense of folks had a lot of hope.
Yeah.
They're like, man, we're really doing this, but we actually didn't connect the energy to the polls.
Yeah.
It was a lot of good feelings on social media. It was a lot of great graphics and visuals on television, but it wasn't a lot of, let me pick up this phone and make sure you went and voted today.
And that's where I want to bring in like your son. You said he's 24 now, and back then obviously 22. Did you two have that sort of engagement then, or what was he saying then about the electorate at that age?
Yeah, I mean, he's been voting since, his first candidate that he got to vote for was Stacey Abrams.
Right.
When she ran the second time. And so, he was very much, actually the first time, and he had to do a mail-in ballot because he was at the Naval Academy at the time.
Okay.
And, we had to go through that process. And he was like, what's a stamp?
Wait, what? Oh, my gosh.
But that generation, they grew up on tech.
Yeah. So I tell you what, I'm going to take a quick break, and I want to dive into some of the issues that matter to you. Mail-in voting would be one of them, actually. We're with Amanda Hollowell, first congressional district nominee for the Democratic Party on the Ron Show. It's Georgia Now. Amanda Hollowell joins us. First congressional district Democratic Party nominee, but she's not just that. She hasn't won the job yet. She's still got work to do, and so we were literally just talking before we came back on this segment. You are literally hopping in the car shortly from your district and heading up to the Capitol here in Atlanta to start dealing with. Oh my God! On the calendar today is the special session to address the way we vote and potentially maps. It's exhausting. I mean, how much sleep did you get last night?
I mean, not much. We got home around 1. Woo. I think I woke up around 6.
Woo.
But what's good for me is that I've been exhausted and on this on a sleep schedule for 9 months. So it wasn't like I thought I was going to go home and get 12 hours of sleep. I knew what was ahead of me. We've known for a little bit over like close to a month now that we were going back in a special session. So, but
I mean, usually after a campaign, even a primary, you get a little bit of respite. You're getting absolutely none.
None. Yeah, and I think that speaks to the urgency of the moment. They see the momentum, and they're going to use all the tools to yield their power. And one of those tools is making us exhausted.
Well, I didn't know this, but even the fact that we have runoffs in the state is based, in some racism. Yeah,
correct.
And the idea to exhaust us, to wear us down was. I mean, I say us. I'm not black, but it is to exhaust just the casual voter, to wear us down to where we don't want to show up and participate. In a runoff or a runoff is part of the process. That's by design.
Absolutely. And, we were hitting on this when you asked if like a black woman running for office. I was extremely afraid of voter fatigue, that folks were disappointed with the results of 2024. Would they believe in hope again?
Mm-hmm.
And when I got on this trail and started doing it, I started very small with small house parties and meetings. And before we went big, and I had women coming up to me and saying like, thank you. It's okay to hope again.
Oh,
it is okay
nice.
to believe again, because for a long time folks were dismayed, they felt bad, they were angry. There was just so many feelings about like, how do we stand up and how do we say we're part of this country right now? And I really leaned into that, and I told them, one of the slogans we say all the time is hope is not a bad word.
Yes, I love that. We're with Amanda Hollowell. She is the 1st Congressional District Democratic Party nominee. Listen to that. I mean, just a breath of fresh air and the energy behind her. I absolutely love that. I'm going to take one more break. I apologize, but I got to hit the bottom of the hour news here, and then we'll pick right back up on the things that are going to matter to you most campaign-wise, policy-wise. It's The Ron Show on Georgia Now, Progressive Voice of you. Tune in or wherever you podcast.
This is The Ron Show.
Heard weekdays, 8 a.m., 4 p.m. on Georgia Now, 11 p.m. Progressive Voice of you. Tune in or wherever you podcast. Lots to talk about. Rick Jackson now the GOP nominee. I call him Rick the Ick. And, I mean, you couldn't get any ickier than having Ted Cruz coming into the state and stumping for you. Ick. You had Donald Trump Jr. on social media giving him his kudos. Ick. I mean, these are the two of the ickiest human beings on the planet, along with Rick Jackson. And now it's he's the guy. We're going to be flooded with those TV commercials now, all aimed at Keisha Lance Bottoms. And all the while trying to remind us that, he's out there for someone other than himself, the billionaire who made tons of money off of charging the state of Georgia for healthcare staffing. I'm sure the staffers didn't make a whole lot of that money, in the throes of COVID. We are with Amanda Hollowell, by the way, who is the 1st Congressional District nominee for the Democratic Party here in the state of Georgia. One of those seats that we need to flip. One of those districts that could be tinkered with here in the General Assembly special session. And you're heading up here to advocate for what exactly? Not touching the maps or making the maps more? I mean, is it possible that maybe you could have some influence, or there could be some influence outside the Capitol to make these maps more fair? I doubt it, but...
I mean, I think what we're trying to do is lessen the harm.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so
Mitigate,
where we are in the Southeast Georgia, they're potentially taking a state house seat from us.
Mm-hmm.
As now a congressional rep,
Mm-hmm.
Congressional candidate, there is another congressional sitting, Sanford Bishop, and they're trying to eye his seat. And dilute our power there. And so for me, it's, these people stood up for me during my campaign. I'm going to stand up for them and their advocacy. This is also what I do for my full-time job.
Mm-hmm.
And we know what they're trying to do. They're trying to dilute the power of the Black vote in the South, in order to make sure that they can still win their elections. But the numbers don't lie. Census numbers don't lie. It's changing.
Yeah.
It's geographically changing in the South. And we need to make sure we make it too big to rig.
When we were talking last segment a little bit about black voters, black women coming up to you and saying thank you for stepping up and running for office and showing that there is still hope is not a bad word. How do I say this? I feel as if, and again, completely on the outside, because I'm not a woman, I'm not a black woman, but I feel like on the outside of that periphery, there was a lot of just resignation. Not my problem. That was a big thing I see on social media. And then it seemed as if once Trump got into office, one of the top priorities of that administration was attacking DEI. DEI affecting, I think, 3 core groups the most: women of color, veterans, and women. Period. Even white women. And so it almost seemed as if, oh, wait, you're coming after us first. And it almost as if there was that immediate pivot. No, you're not. We're going to step up. We're still seeing this in the Department of War or the Department of Defense. Pete Hegseth just capping promotions or denying promotions and
firing people.
Yeah, or just outright
long-term generals.
Right.
Like I come from a family who served, and it's heartbreaking for them to watch.
Absolutely. Yeah. Speak to that, because now there has to be a little bit of a fire in the bellies of those who have been, I think, prime targets almost since Trump was sworn in for their second time.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know her name at the moment, but I know one of the women that got dismissed by Pete Hegseth it is running for office and winning, right, for Congress. And so there are a lot of folks who took that moment who were, who served our country and said, nah, not today. Today, this looks different. And I know I'm tough enough to do it. They'll have to get the chops around the policy, but who doesn't? And so I think what I do have to appreciate that they're doing in real time. There is no boogeyman, right? You could turn on the television and see the harm that this administration is doing to somebody that every day.
Yeah. Well, and speak to me, being the product of a military household, it's always been, I am too, like my grandfather and my uncle both served in the Army. It's always been curious to me why the GOP just gets that de facto military support that they do when you see the results. They send us off to war willy-nilly on false pretenses or dragged into it by Benjamin Netanyahu in this case. The sacrifices that are made by people who tend to vote for the party that I think takes them for granted the most.
That they absolutely do. And I do think, there's that sense of patriotism, and that Republicans have, they've trademarked patriotism as this is a Republican thing. I think now with the advent of MAGA, patriotism is kind of out the window. They're still trying to cut veterans benefits right now as we speak. And there's that national organizing union of veterans folks is amazing. They stay in DC on top of these folks next, fighting to keep their benefits because they're like, look, we serve this country. And I think, I am not going to shame anybody. We know that the statistics say like 40% of folks are Black or brown or people who, come from disadvantaged communities, why they enter the military. It's an economic decision. And so it is hard to bite the hand that feeds you.
That is true. Let me ask another awkward question. I think within the Democratic Party, quite obviously a minority. I am a white male who happens to vote consistently Democrat. So being a candidate of color, there obviously is going to have to be some way to appeal to what we call the manosphere. And I'm not a manosphere guy, but we saw that display at the White House over the weekend. You're not going to crack through everybody. But when you have some douchebag, making statements about Michelle Obama, there has to be a way to crack through to some people who may be interested in MMA or UFC or motorbiking, all that sort of stuff. But also, like, they're hurting just as much in your congressional district, no matter if they're white male or Black female or white. Like, there's so much. How do you crack through? At the heart of it in this country, I think racism is baked into our political DNA, and we have to somehow awaken the minds of those that are just too easily influenced by that crap to let them understand, hey, you know what? You're getting peed on too. That's not rain coming down from top. So, how do you appeal to those voters that you otherwise may not be able to appeal to? I think this is a special moment, 2026, these midterms. This is a special moment and a moment that's going to have to call on us to be able to undo a lot of that and to turn on some lights in some places that we haven't been able to shine a light into before as Democrats.
Yeah. I mean, I start with, most people vote out of their self-interest.
Yeah.
And he was saying good things to you. He made you think the sky was falling.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And what we didn't do was tell a good story of how successful the Biden administration was actually in the middle of, a pandemic.
Yeah.
They had figured out how to increase child care tax credit. They had figured out how to make infrastructure a job creator.
Yeah.
They had figured out so many things that brought, different aspects of folks to this country. And I will say this, they had also figured out how for corporations to look at things and say, oh, that still benefits me.
Yeah.
Even though it says green.
Yeah.
Right. Even though it says sustainable.
Yeah.
And so I now they're like, I saw some video recently from a guy from a manosphere, and they were asking about gas prices, and he was like, boy, do I miss my Uncle Joe. Now,
all right.
Right. But now we get to have that conversation.
Yeah.
Like I always, my son, when he played football, those first couple of plays, because he was an outside linebacker.
Okay.
He would always kind of be a little like off. And then he would see it, right? He would see the quarterbacks, whatever those signs the quarterback was giving, or what their tells were,
Yeah.
And how he was going to do his rush on the end.
Yeah.
And I used to scream from the stands. I was like, "You see it now, so let's fix it."
I like that. No, I love this. Listen, we need more candidates like you. But I've been saying for quite a while now. I saw JD Vance was on The View yesterday. I don't know if you had a chance to watch it. You've been busy. You've been campaigning, so I'll tell you what happened.
Go ahead.
JD Vance. I'll give him credit. He went on The View, but he went on The View and he kept parroting these talking points. And the one that really annoys me the most is about Biden and inflation. And I will remind anybody who will listen to me. Biden's inflation wasn't Biden's fault. He inherited that as well. And I know a lot of people don't see it that way, but when President Trump left office, and he didn't do it willingly, he left office after signing a deal with OPEC that lasted 2 years, that throttled back oil production, that caused for a spike in gas prices. The spike in gas prices, as we know now, affects the cost of everything. So when that oil deal was signed, he signed it for some damn reason for 2 years with OPEC in April of 2020.
And then half of them left.
Right. And then get this. April 2022, that deal expired on April 30th. A month later, wouldn't you know, gas prices started coming down and inflation started cooling. That was not Joe Biden's fault. He tried to get OPEC out of that deal and they wouldn't budge. That was a Trump initiative, and that's what caused the inflation that Biden had to address as well. And again, Democrats just didn't do a good enough job talking about that.
They didn't. Also, don't forget that horrible tax plan that when Joe Biden came in, he ended it, which was all those huge corporate tax breaks for folks. The first thing that Trump does when he comes back is enact it as permanent.
Mm-hmm.
This is why folks are walking around talking about Elon Musk is a trillionaire. He's a trillionaire on our backs.
Yeah.
On the backs of us, right? But we didn't tell that story well. We didn't tell the successes. I know, former Department of Transportation head Pete Buttigieg does a really great job.
Yes, he does.
At bringing that story to people so it's digestible. Andy Beshear, I've been watching him, the governor, and he's been doing a great job. He was like, take the rhetoric out, take the theology out, and just say, because this happened, that's happening to you.
I want to go through some of your 10-point affordability agenda, and then we'll let you go because I know you got to hit the streets here, coming up to Atlanta to campaign against this special session to redraw maps. Number one, and I don't think that's a mistake. Number one, make healthcare more affordable and accessible. Talk a little bit about that. If you're in the House of Representatives, how you're going to help steer that.
At times we get too caught up in slogans where we're screaming Medicare for all, but we're not talking about the logistics. If you live in the rural area, that, the access to quality facilities, the access to quality doctors is hard to come by.
Yeah.
And so it's not just affordability. It's actually making sure we have a pipeline of folks who want to care for everybody and that we're actually giving them clean facilities that are up to par and state of the art to actually make sure that we're servicing folks.
Yeah, and I think that's something that you can campaign with both Senator Ossoff and Mayor Bottoms, who's running for governor in the state of Georgia, to open up the spigot so that we can get that Medicaid expansion here, because I think that would make a huge difference especially in your congressional district. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, go ahead.
I was going to say the next thing on the list, you don't see this as a priority for a lot of candidates and campaigns, but I think this is huge. Childcare and elder care and the affordability of it is a huge thing. We think about, moms, new dads, working and trying to balance that and taking care of their children. But it's the same with elder care on the opposite side.
It is. And, we're talking about clean facilities. When we think about these Medicaid cuts that really go into action in 2027, those folks who are in nursing homes, immediate. We're going to see folks be ejected, evicted out of their place of stay. And, I am of the news word that they're calling it, the sandwich generation now.
That's right. Yeah.
Where I have a father who I'm taking care of in my home, and I have a son who just graduated college, who I'm also helping get on his feet in a straining economy. So I'm feeling it from, I'm bookend in this situation, and I feel it from both ends. And so, I remember what it was like as a single mother trying to find affordable childcare and how to make my taxes work for me when I had my son. And now I'm looking at what does the healthcare look like for my father,
Yeah.
As he uses VA services and Medicaid, and how do I support him and stand up for him? Because, there's no way you can survive on the stipends or the grants that they offer you.
Yeah.
When they say like, oh, you're a full-time caretaker, great, here's $1,900 a month, but you got to quit your job. That's crazy.
Yeah.
You can't live off of that as one person. We know there's rents in Wayne County, Georgia, that are $1,700 for a 2-bedroom, 2-bath, right? And so we have to have a well-rounded conversation about care. It's not just about children; it's also about our aging community.
And also the folks that come in to do that elder care, like they need to be paid better. They need the benefits.
Absolutely.
They need to have healthcare benefits as well, because there's a lot of stress and strain on their bodies that can chip away over time. I want to tie 3 and 4 together. And again, we're not going to go down the entire top 10, but I think 3 and 4 are intertwined. I'm a real estate agent. I'm a realtor. So here in Atlanta, I understand what this is all about. Making housing more affordable and lowering transportation costs. I am furious. I am so frustrated. There's been so much browbeating over the last few weeks talking about MARTA and what MARTA doesn't do and yada, yada, yada. And I keep pointing out MARTA is the largest mass transit authority in the country not to get a dime of state funding. And I think that's a big part of it. And again, racism's in the DNA. I know that that's a lot of it. But I've also been telling anybody who will listen running at the state level, and here, you can take this to Congress too. Georgia needs to connect its other cities to its airport. We need to connect at Augusta and Columbus and Macon and Savannah and Athens to Hartsfield-Jackson Airport with a rail network that gets people here so that, and I've said this, get Delta involved. I think they'd love to get out of the loss leader game. They don't like those flights either because they don't make them any money. But I think housing affordability and connecting the rest of the state to each other, I think matters a lot, because if you can get on a train from McDonough and work in downtown Atlanta versus having to sit in traffic for 45 minutes to an hour 15 or more, you're more likely to go find something affordable in McDonough to live in than having to live somewhere closer into the suburbs or in the city itself.
Absolutely. And like when I toured Georgia Ports Authority, I asked them what's the hardest thing about the labor market out here. And they said driver's license and transportation. Yeah. And I went, really? And they were like, yeah, because folks are going to be commuting 45 minutes out to get to the port to work because they cannot afford to live in, proper Savannah. Yeah. And I didn't think about that. And they were also like, we are a job creator throughout the whole state. Mm-hmm. So we also see people who have to come down from North Georgia and from Atlanta to talk to us about becoming business, being partners with us in our business. And they were like, we have a large part of our business is small businesses, people who can afford the one container and ship their things in. But that also is going to cost them to come down here and talk to us and make sure the warehousing and the shipping's okay. And I didn't really think about those barriers that we create, that are created from entrepreneurship through transportation.
Yes. 1,000%. Well, transportation and, of course, healthcare access as well, because a lot of folks stay at their jobs because they need that insurance for themselves and or their family, their kids, their spouse or whatnot, versus jumping out into the business on their own. Listen, I know you got to hit the road, so I'm going to let you do that, but wouldn't it be nice to be hopping on a train and knowing that that's taken care of and you can just continue doing these sorts of calls and call time for voters and whatnot if you were just sitting on a rail network that took you here to Atlanta to work at the state capitol today?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, hopefully they'll pull it off in California to connect north to southern. Right. I know there's things talking about how to better connect the East Coast. Yeah. But when I'm in DC, I ride the train to Baltimore, to New York, to Philly. So it's doable. Yep.
1,000%. All right, Amanda Hollowell is the Democratic nominee for Georgia's 1st Congressional District. I'm going to wish you the best of luck and open invitation. Come back on the show anytime, okay? I do appreciate your time today on The Ron Show.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Yes, more candidates like that, please. Whether she does or doesn't win Georgia's 1st Congressional District, she is going to be something of an asset, a resource to help get John Ossoff, potentially Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms, State Senator Josh McLaren across the finish line as well. But obviously, I like that enthusiasm, and she can flip Georgia's 1st Congressional District. What does that mean for the other congressional districts that didn't have that 22% red deficit to overcome? Very exciting stuff. It's The Ron Show. Georgia Now, Progressive Voice of you. Tune in wherever you podcast. So let me spend just a few minutes here talking a little bit about the clout, if you will, of Governor Brian Kemp. I think that's on the way out. And I happen to think that, first of all, backing the wrong horse in the Senate primary is going to have some lasting damage for his political brand. We've seen reports about the money funnel, I call it, between his PAC and the Dooley PAC and Derek Dooley's brother's school safety business and Governor Kemp's influence on getting a lot of state money and then at school system level money towards Dooley's school safety business. It's all very icky. And I think that's going to come back to weigh on Brian Kemp should he decide to step into the arena and run for whatever he decides to run for in 2028 or whenever. But also, let's talk about the Kemp political machine. Friend of the show, Nate, who I think works on the Ossoff campaign. Nate Rich shared this, and it's so spot on. It's not even funny. This is a picture of Peter Griffin from Family Guy, dressed up as the Grim Reaper with the Grim Reaper in the chair. Peter comes for the Grim Reaper. Anyway, it's just a funny visual that goes with the notion of a Kemp political machine that includes the likes of Kelly Loeffler, Fitz Johnson. That's me with the sickle. Herschel Walker. Although I think you could attribute Herschel a little bit more to Donald Trump, but whatever. I'm not going to quibble here. He did endorse Burt Jones as well. Derek Dooley. What an outside the box. I almost feel like sometimes when you think you're good at something, you'll try something that will not. You ever see somebody who's feeling it on the dance floor and you're like, oh man, they're really feeling it. And you know, you're kind of digging what they're doing, and then they try something so outlandish, so crazy, maybe a backflip or something like that, and they land flat on their back or hurt themselves, and you're like, ooh, yeah. To me, Derek Dooley was the guy at the wedding who's enjoying his dance moves and feeling it, and then he tried the backflip, ooh, and landed smack on his ass. That was, I know you want to call it calculated, but sometimes I think folks in the GOP look at names and go, oh, yeah, that could work. Name appeal. Herschel Walker, name appeal. He, by the way, the ambassador to the Bahamas. What a gig. I want that gig. By the way, for that gig, he posted a video warning American tourists about shady jet ski renters. What a job. But yeah, the Derek Dooley thing. Dooley, of course, his dad, having coached at the University of Georgia, go Dogs. Vince coaching so many years, national championship 1980. And then Derek, who, as I mentioned at the start of the show, is not only a failed college football coach, an under 500 record coaching college football, now he has an under 500 record as a political candidate. Too soon? And then you have the scepter of this special session that the governor has called. And while I know a lot of folks are hand-wringing about, well, you know, this is Trump influence and he's going to try and push them to change maps, et cetera, and so on, I would say not so fast. First of all, Trump, I don't believe, cares as much about what happens here in Atlanta over the next few days with this special session because he can't directly benefit from it. The governor took that off the table. 2026 will not be on the table. And so whatever happens in the midterms happens because of the maps we currently have, which are already gerrymandered and I believe racially gerrymandered anyway. But so that's not going to. And also, you're hearing a lot of conversations from even Republicans who are saying they're not all that inclined to want to change maps any further anyway. So Governor Kemp bringing them to this special session doesn't necessarily mean that they have to do anything. I want to take you to something that the folks at the Politically Georgia blog at the AJC, that's Tia Mitchell and Adam Beam, Greg Bluestein wrote about this redistricting effort. Some House Republicans privately resisting the idea of redrawing the 2028 political boundaries during the special session that begins, well, today. Even if the map vote stalls, legislators would still return to Atlanta to address the deadline on how Georgia counts votes. But key GOP figures worry the effort would energize Democrats and distract from the party's message on the economy and public safety in tough races against Senator John Ossoff and Keisha Lance Bottoms, the Democratic nominee for governor. Skipping past the Rick Jackson Burt Jones talk, some lawmakers remain staunchly against the idea. And no matter how Tuesday's runoffs shake out, they could feel more emboldened to balk. If that happens, it likely won't be with Kemp's blessing. But the governor's proclamation merely directs lawmakers to consider enacting, revising, or repealing or amending the state's political boundaries. He cannot put redistricting on the agenda. He can't force lawmakers to pass it. And then there's Burt Jones, who presides over the state Senate. How interested or disinterested will he be today now that he is essentially walking out after this session? Like, his political career is, if not done, it's completely on pause. And by the way, do we need to pass the hat? How how's Burt Jones going to make a living if he can't enact policy that enriches him and his family? But I digress. To me, this segment's a little bit of a postmortem. The beginnings of, anyway, of the political legacy of one Brian Kemp, former Secretary of State, current governor of the state of Georgia. I think the sun is setting on this, and I don't know. What'll happen after Trump is done from the Republican Party, and which direction the party pivots to? Maybe they pivot towards a Kempian direction, but as of right now, in June of 2026, Kemp's influence over the state Republican Party, Republican voters, and the state of Georgia, well, that influence is sunsetting. It's the Ron Show on Georgia Now, 8 a.m., 4 p.m. weekdays, 11 p.m. Progressive Voices via TuneIn or wherever you podcast. My thanks to Amanda Hollowell for joining us this hour. Show notes, as always, at ronshowatl.com.
From the heart of the city too busy to hate, a progressive voice making too much sense for corporate media's comfort. This is the Ron Show, where we the people come first. Here's your host, Ron Roberts.
Joining me for hour number 2 is Andrew Heaton, Atlanta-based political consultant, Sagamore Hill Consulting. So here we are. We've got the results. We've got just exhausting for some of these folks to turn around and have to head to the State House today to deal with a special session to address maps and the way we vote and the way we count votes, et cetera, and so on. Anyway, Andrew Heaton joins us for a little postmortem on the primary and primary runoff. Now we know who's going to be facing who in the general election in November. From the left side of the spectrum, how do we have to feel about the entire slate, top to bottom?
I feel good. I feel good because here's what we have. We have at the top of the ticket, which really is what a lot of people are going to be focused on. At the top of the ticket, we have some really good, proven fighters and folks who know how not only to campaign, but know how to talk to people. You got one of the better communicators in Senator Ossoff. You've got someone that clearly resonates with people every time she gets on a ballot in Mayor Bottoms. And you've got folks like now Josh McLaurin, who it can be a bulldog, but the funniest bulldog you've ever heard.
Yes.
And is just one of the sharpest minds to come through the Gold Dome in a long time. You got Chairwoman Tanya Miller of the House Caucus running for AG. Yep. You got Judge Penny Brown Reynolds at Secretary of State. I mean, we've just got some really great candidates at the top that I think, and look, it's not that the other roles aren't important, but people are only going to hear from so many people. They're only going to have so much time, and it's really going to kind of settle at the top. And that's what we've seen in several cycles. And I'm just really excited about the top of our ticket. And I think overall we've got, just a solid ticket and some really great candidates. And I'm excited, especially seeing what the Republicans are throwing out there.
And I want to also extend this out a little bit to some of the congressional candidates that we have running. Obviously, whether or not Sean Harris can win Northwest Georgia, he is chipping away at that deficit. And he's an effective candidate, an effective advocate for the party and for the brand. I think of Mara Keller. I think of Caitlin Geoghegan. I adore Caitlin Geoghegan. I just love that spirit that she taps into a little of that Sam Frost, that David Hogg, younger generation of voter that needs to come out. We just had Amanda Hollowell on from the Georgia 1st Congressional District earlier in the show. I love her enthusiasm. I think she's very sharp. I also think the fact that she's got a 24-year-old son that she goes back and forth with and has these conversations about reaching out to that younger voter, I think that's something of a resource as well. I look at the entire diaspora of the Georgia Democratic Party ticket, whether it's House races, obviously Ossoff at the top, Mayor Bottoms. I think it's a good representation of where the party is in the swingiest of swing states in the country.
Absolutely. And not only you're right, some of those candidates you mentioned are just putting in the work. Sean has been working on that community now for so long, yep. and has really built up a good name for himself and for the party. He is exactly what you said. He is exactly what you hope for someone to carry the standard in a district like that. And I think we've got a slate that if you always have this conversation, is this a slate that can bring out the base while also appealing to pass the base? And I think we've got a slate that absolutely can appeal to the base, and I think can also appeal past the base. So I'm really excited.
I want to start with the Senate race now. John Ossoff looks like he's in a comfortable position. I mean, you got, liberals outside of this state, talking about him, well, liberals inside this state, I'd be one of them, talking about him potentially being a 2028 dark horse, but of course he's got to win 2026 first. So, let's pause the talk on 2028. But he's in a comfortable position. But I actually happen to think that Mike Collins being his combatant, as weak as Derek Dooley was, an unconventional choice for Brian Kemp to back a losing football coach and now a losing political candidate, under 500 record in both. I happen to think that Mike Collins is actually kind of toxic even within the Republican Party enough that this might make Ossoff's job of winning re-election a little easier.
Yeah, well, I mean, absolutely. I mean, just like with anytime you have someone with no record versus someone with a record that they have to run on and point to, that's exactly what we get with Collins. We get a record to run against. We get also a series of questionable decisions that have been very public to run against. So absolutely, I think there's definitely more meat on the bones for the Ossoff team to get their hands around and go after with Collins than there would have been with Dooley.
I think the thing that worries me about Collins, however, is that the larger the spotlight would be on him, or the more of an ability for folks to get to know him, he's very Trumpy, but he's not New York City Trumpy. He's Southern Trumpy, and
he's tenacious.
Yeah, I mean, does that appeal? Does that make people feel more drawn to him that love Trump and love the fight that he takes to liberals and to Democrats?
I mean, we'll see. We'll see. Yes, that is always the concern. It's kind of the concern we always have. But I think one of the things we've seen over the last 12 years is, and that gives me heartburn saying it that long. But right. We, no matter how many people try to be Trumpy, there's only really one Trump. And people, candidates in states across the country and races across the country have tried to be the next Trump. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. And so just because he emulates and just because he might pantomime some of the Trump, ways of communicating, it doesn't always resonate the same. Yeah. But what I will say is he absolutely is tenacious. He's absolutely, he does not fight. He does not fight lightly. And so definitely the Ossoff team, it's going to be a battle.
There's also this. Donald Trump won elections against, I think, candidates that were not as skillful as John Ossoff. I said it. I think Kamala was a good candidate and ran a great race under the time frame that she was allowed to. And if she'd had a little bit more of a runway, she probably would have pulled this off. But John Ossoff is, again, folks outside of Georgia are just, glomming on about him being like the next Obama. I mean, and he really does, his cadence, his speeches, he really does have that it factor that I think a lot of folks are looking for in that next savior of the party and of the liberal brand. So for Mike Collins to have to take that on versus, let's be honest, Hillary Clinton wasn't a great campaigner. The most qualified candidate to run for the office at the time, I get all that, but she was not a good campaigner. John Ossoff is a good campaigner.
Yeah, he absolutely is. And he's shown that since his very first congressional special election. He knows how to communicate while also reaching folks. He knows how to establish rapport with audiences. He knows how to bring folks in. Absolutely. He is a great campaigner. He is great on the stump. He's great in small rooms. He's great in arenas. He has shown himself to be a really excellent candidate when you get him out on the trail. And I think you're going to see it again. And so you're right. He is exactly the kind of candidate that can go up against somebody who's trying to ape the Trump path. And I absolutely think he's perfect for the moment.
I'll talk in a later segment a little bit about some of the inner divisions within the Georgia GOP when it comes to Mike Collins. There are folks who are just, I think, going to either hold their nose and vote for him or just not vote in that race at all because of transgressions with his former campaign manager. and a whistleblower who was pretty popular within a lot of Georgia GOP ranks who brought attention to the fact that Brandon hired the girlfriend who did nothing and was getting paid for an internship. I'll talk a little bit about that a little bit later, but I want to move over to the gubernatorial race. So give me just a second. We'll take a quick break and come back. We're with Atlanta-based political consultant Andrew Heaton with Sagamore Hill Consulting. So we'll talk about the enigmatic billionaire that is now the GOP nominee for governor here in the state of Georgia. A fellow by the name of Rick Jackson. Maybe you've heard of him. Maybe you've seen him on TV. I'm sure you have. We'll do that when the Ron Show returns on Georgia Now, Progressive Voices via TuneIn or wherever you podcast. Back on the Ron Show with Atlanta-based political consultant Andrew Heaton. Let's talk the gubernatorial race now that we know the two combatants on either side. So we knew Keisha was running as the Democratic nominee, and now we know that Rick Jackson is the GOP nominee. So my question is, how much of the rancor between Rick Jackson and Burt Jones is there a Burt Jones fan base that's going to be so embittered by that race that they will not show up for Rick Jackson? Or is it going to be, okay, and now it's Rick. Rick's our daddy now, so let's go Team Rick.
Yeah, I don't know if they'll quite say Rick's our daddy, but I definitely
for $100 million he can be a lot of people's daddies.
Well, that's a whole different conversation. But no, I mean, I think they're definitely going to close ranks. I don't think anything happened that was. I mean, maybe amongst some of the truly, inner circle elites,
embedded,
some of the Gold Domer consultant staffer class.
Yeah.
But as far as the rank and file voters, no, I don't think anything was said on that trail that was anything outside of what's happened in every other GOP primary. And we always see they end up coming back. And I don't think there's any Burt Jones voter who is like, Rick Jackson's a bridge too far. No, I don't think so.
That being said, was there any damage done in that primary runoff to Rick Jackson that Democrats can take advantage of?
Well, I think there's definitely going to be some ads. There's definitely going to be some things. He came out of the gate real hot. Yeah. He came out of the gate real piping hot MAGA. And there's definitely be some things that, are going to be able to point to. I think, the thing with anything with a candidate like Rick, who kind of comes out of nowhere, at least for the everyday Georgian, plenty of the consultant class, especially on the GOP side, knew who Rick were and were aware of Rick. But everyday voters had no idea who he was till 5-6 months ago. But I think there's, that's the one thing that the bottoms team and everybody are going to have to kind of dig in and kind of get their hands around where do you go after Rick. But as far as things he said on the trail, yeah, he definitely, there's some things they're going to point back to. And I think they even realized that they realized, okay, we got a general coming soon. We got to kind of pull back a little bit and we got to start to soften this guy's image a little bit.
Yeah,
which
I saw that.
All of a sudden you've magically got an ad with his grandkids and a dog and a pickup truck.
Yeah.
And it's like, wait, where did this Rick Jackson come from? So I think that's a reflection of them realizing, all right, we've really just been serving the white hot heat. We got to calm down a little bit. So, I think there are going to be some things he said about immigrants, the trans community. But, the question will be, will enough voters say, oh, well, chalk it up to a primary? Because we've seen the same thing. I mean, again, Governor Kemp, who eventually became one of the more popular two-term governors, had plenty of folks in the middle, thought he was a great governor. That first campaign, he was talking about rounding up illegal immigrants in a pickup truck. Mm-hmm. So, there's always a little room to get some forgiveness from the voters, but we'll have to see. There's still a bit of a question mark about Rick Jackson, and that's going to be the struggle. I think early on is just kind of getting your hands around who is the real Rick Jackson. Well,
I think the difference between Brian Kemp and Rick Jackson is Brian Kemp didn't have undocumented immigrants working on his property, and Burt Jones exposed that.
Yeah, and I say that to say that is the part about Rick Jackson's record that we don't know about yet. What else is there? I mean, that's what Jones' team was able to uncover in the short time span of a primary.
Yeah.
what else is there? I mean, because the reality is this is not a young candidate.
Yeah.
This is not, and as for much as the public didn't know about him, it's not that he wasn't a public figure to some degree. So there's going to be stuff out there. The question is what comes out, because something's going to come out. You've not been you don't become a billionaire without leaving some kind of trail.
Well, there's obviously the state contract during COVID. He did make a lot of money off of the health care from the state of Georgia during the COVID campaign. And so I don't know what Democrats will make of that, but to me, that's a little icky. I thought it was really icky that he brought in Ted Cruz and got a little love on social media from Donald Trump Jr. of all people. I mean, the two of the ickiest human beings on the planet. And Rick's icky enough. Like I had a hard time feeling sorry for Burt Jones, but I know Burt Jones got baited into doing that video, glomming on about Rick Jackson. And Rick Jackson did that knowing he was going to run against him. I just, in my heart of hearts, I believe that. It was just so calculating and so icky, and that he used a foster children's charity to do it. It's just the ickiest.
Well, and I truly, one of the more baffling things that's happened in the last, I guess, 72 hours now was Governor Kemp coming out with an endorsement for Burt.
Why at all that late? Yeah.
And there's conversation that, while not the whole reason, maybe not even the deciding factor, I mean, there is some idea that some of it was Governor Kemp and Marty and the girls just got real tired of seeing Rick Jackson ads that manipulated, again, kind of baited video of Governor Kemp going on about Rick Jackson and Rick using that to make it look like he had Governor Kemp's support and endorsement.
Yeah.
And like the Kemp world and the Kemp team just kind of got sick of it. And so there is a bit of this kind of like cold calculation to Rick Jackson and his consultant team and whoever's running his campaign, that, man, they're willing to do some stuff that, stretches the bounds. And this is all we've seen so far. And that's why I just keep saying, like, the real question about Rick Jackson is not about what we've heard so far and what we know about so far. Is like, what else is there? Because it's just, there's gotta be. It feels like there's something there. And you're right. He pulled these weird like, even with the Don Jr. thing, that was like a quasi endorsement, and even Don went out of his way to say, like, now I know my dad endorsed Burt, and but I just want to say Rick Jackson's a great guy. It's like, what is this? What is going on? So man, it's a weird situation over there.
We're with Andrew Heaton, Atlanta-based political consultant, Sagamore Hill Consulting. Something that I started hearing a little bit about on social media this week about Rick was, first of all, he's a man in his 70s. He's also, his wife apparently is like fighting cancer. You didn't see her on the campaign trail. You don't see her in campaign ads or literature or anything like that. And also, apparently there's a history of her having donated to, I believe it's the Ossoff campaign in 2025.
I've heard that as well.
Yeah, I mean, that's all very curious. Like, is there is the marriage in strain, or are they on the same page? Why is he running for governor when his wife's battling cancer? I don't know what to make of that.
And I will just, as far as the money goes, and as far as, like, his wife giving to Ossoff fairly recently.
Mm-hmm. Last year.
Yeah, I will say that one part of his record that's very clear is they are kind of your standard, typical, mega wealthy people, in that they kind of sprinkle money a little everywhere.
Yeah,
there's a little bit of bet hedging that goes on.
Yeah.
Around the entire ecosystem.
Okay.
And that's not untypical with folks like that.
Mm-hmm.
But you're right. It also is. And I don't want to. I'm really trying to not speculate too much about the wife and her health thing right now, because who knows? It could be a situation where, because again, yes, she is sick, but they might be on the same page about, like, hey, Rick, you're no spring chicken yourself, and if you're ever going to do this, now's the time to do it.
Could be, yeah.
We'll get through my thing. I'm okay. Go out and do this. Maybe that's the conversation they had. It could be. So I'm resisting speculating too much, but it does just, it continues the whole thing about like, I don't really know what to make of this guy in some ways. And yes, he's got the ads, he comes across genial, comes across, but I don't know. There's something, even just the way he kind of came out of nowhere. It's like, what is motivating this?
Yeah.
What is going on? And at first, the idea was, well, he's just really got a bone to pick with Burt Jones. And this guy clearly, and there's still the speculation that has never fully been answered about, yeah, you were running those dark money ads against Burt, right?
I mean, come on. Like, we know, you can, and he's lying about it. Like, he's lying to our faces about it. Like, we're not stupid.
And so it's just, he is the $1 billion man of mystery right now to me in so many ways.
Yeah. And here we are as Democrats kind of bracing for oh God, if he spent $100 million or however many millions of dollars he did to win this nomination, what'll he do for the next 4 or 5 months?
Well, and I can tell you there is already heartburn across the kind of political spectrum about, we were giving ourselves a lot of comfort about the Ossoff war chest and about the money that would come in, and we're going to be in a great financial position. Whew, buddy, chalk all that out though, and whatever the consultants and whatever the media buyers on all the various teams had, kind of penciled in for media buys, burn those numbers to the ground, because Rick Jackson is about to jack up the price on everything. And also take away, boy, if you didn't already start stockpiling some media inventory, good luck.
That's true. Well, and we've seen with Keisha's campaign disclosures, like there wasn't a whole lot of money outside of what she was pulling from herself.
Yeah, I mean, it is going to be a free for all, and I don't know. It's kind of a question. I don't know how many more Rick Jackson commercials I can see because I already feel like I constantly see them. Like I don't know about you, but I watch a lot of Braves games on Braves Vision, and that man he
owned it.
Plunked out a good amount of commercial slots during Braves games.
He sure did. He owned it.
And buddy, I can only imagine how many more I'm about to watch between now and November. I'm going to see a lot of Rick Jackson's face.
Yeah, I feel like he's probably going to spend a lot more time over the next few months trying to reframe what Keisha Lance Bottoms is, but we'll see how that all plays out as the Braves continue playing on through the summer. Andrew Heaton, Atlanta-based political consultant, Sagamore Hill Consulting. Thanks for joining the Ron Show for a conversation today, buddy. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Broadcasting 5 days a week to make common sense common again. This is The Ron Show.
Heard weekdays 8 a.m., 4 p.m. on Georgia Now, 11 p.m. Progressive Voice via TuneIn or wherever you podcast. All right, so I said I was going to touch on this because I think this is something that may matter. First of all, it's really important to understand that Jon Ossoff already has, I believe, a pretty healthy advantage, not just in incumbency, but also just in the fact that Senator Jon Ossoff has been a rising star in politics for quite a while. I mean, he ran in that special election in 2017, and while he didn't win, he was making headways. He was overperforming the party in 2017. A lot of folks came away from that special election thinking, the Georgia Democratic Party, not quite there yet. And I mean, at that point, they were not quite there yet. But they knew they had something in a 30-year-old candidate who was seemingly groomed for a future in politics and was resonating. There was one ad that I saw. I want to say it was it Rachel Maddow that pulled back an ad from 2017 Ossoff congressional campaign that resonates right now.
Imagine you had 30 seconds to make a life or death decision affecting thousands of Americans. That's what we expect of our president. Sound judgment. That's why it's so concerning to see President Trump act impulsively. He's not only embarrassing us on the world stage, he could start an unnecessary war.
Oh.
I'm Jon Ossoff, and I approve this message because I'll work with anybody to do what's right for our country. But we can't let Donald Trump put us at risk.
That was back in 2017 when he was running for Congress. Unsuccessful in that bid, but like he was striking a tone that you could run that ad right now and it would be like, just prescient. I mean, he was predicting the impulsiveness of Donald Trump, the president 1.0 that we're now living through Trump 2.0 in. I mean, like if I were on his campaign staff, I'd say, you know what, we should run that back. Maybe like a look back into time and make it look all prophetic, how prophetic you were about this in 2017, and where are we now? And what if Ossoff had won in 20? I don't know. You don't want to go down that rabbit hole. But he does have this advantage over Mike Collins. Here's another advantage that he has over Mike Collins. There are a lot of Republicans who do not like Mike Collins. There are a lot of conservatives in the state that do not like Mike Collins. Adversarial friend of the show, one Austin Rhodes, the news talk host in Augusta, Georgia, my hometown, conservative on the right-wing radio station. He's not a fan of Mike Collins. He shared this social media post on June the 5th, a reminder of what I told you people a year ago. Mike Collins never corrected this atrocity. He is unworthy of our support in this race. And he shared clips from the Daily Mail headline, Scandal Rocks Congress as top aide is caught in outrageous plot with this much younger girlfriend. The nerve. Congressional aide caught in scandal, hired girlfriend, fired whistleblower. I'll get to the whistleblower in a minute. And then you read some of the story. A political scandal unfolding in Georgia. Mike Collins' top aide, Brandon Phillips, faces accusations of nepotism and retaliation. Brandon Phillips has only just recently, within days, been let go by the Mike Collins campaign and congressional office. According to insider claims and congressional salary records, Phillips hired his 26-year-old girlfriend, Carolyn Craze, an intern, paying her over $10,000 for work she allegedly never performed. When District Director Jessica Hayes raised concerns after financial staff couldn't verify Craze's employment, she was promptly let go. Former aides claim Craze was absent from the office and Phillips used official funds to cover travel expenses for himself and his partner. Phillips, who earns the congressional chief of staff maximum salary of $212,100, damn, I'm in the wrong line of business, previously pled guilty to animal cruelty and had a criminal record while working on Trump's 2016 campaign. Collins' office denies all wrongdoing, calling the claims revenge driven by disgruntled ex-staffers. The disgruntled ex-staffer apparently being the whistleblower, Jessica Hayes, someone that Austin Rhodes says he knows personally and can vouch for her bona fides. There's also this Tori Branham who posted this. I mean, this whole litany that kind of gives a little bit of the record here. She writes, this was back in August 4th of 2025. Georgia Congressman Mike Collins announced his run for Senate in Georgia, but I have a question about this. If you know anything about it, feel free to give your insight. I think it's well worth noting. I see this kind of ish at the VA and other areas of government where people create jobs at the VA so they can hire their friends, and they pay them more than the people that actually have veterans preference and are qualified. She continues, let's talk about Jessica Hayes. Jessica Hayes wasn't some random staffer. She was the top district aide for Representative Collins, responsible for overseeing constituent services and day-to-day operations in the district office. But according to recent reports, when she started asking the wrong questions, everything blew up and she got fired. Here's what went down, and I'm telling you this because I believe in cleaning out the swamp. This, what was her name again? Tori Branham wrote. The congressman's chief of staff was paying his girlfriend, Carolyn Craze, over $10,000 in taxpayer-funded salary. The kicker, Craze was reportedly barely ever at work. This wasn't just about a lazy employee. This was about misuse of public funds and shady hiring practices within a congressional office. When Jessica raised her concerns internally, hoping for accountability, she was instead shown the door, fired, gone, just like that. Poof. Sounds like retaliation? Many believe it was. Those who know Jessica say she is an upstanding citizen and good human. Hayes has since come forward as a whistleblower, alleging that she was terminated specifically because she asked too many questions about the unethical hiring and spending practices involving the chief of staff and his girlfriend. In other words, she tried to stop what looked like fraud, waste, and abuse, and got punished for it. Of course, the Collins team is pushing back, calling her accusations revenge-driven. But isn't that what every office says when someone exposes the dirty laundry? Yep, appears so. Perhaps maybe sometime people are just on the side of right. If true, this is a disgraceful abuse of taxpayer dollars and a warning about what happens when good people try to do the right thing inside a corrupt system. This is a Republican talking about a Republican candidate here. We're talking about your hard-earned money being funneled to political girlfriends while whistleblowers get thrown out like yesterday's trash. No congressional office should operate like a personal piggy bank, and no public servant should be punished for doing their job with integrity. The big question now, will Congress investigate? They did. Or will this get swept under the rug like so many other scandals? Keep your eyes on this one, Georgia. The truth always has a way of coming out. That is the nominee for U.S. Senate for the Georgia Republican Party to take on John Ossoff, who has no such scurrilous stuff like that happening within his ranks. There are no Democrats that I can think of that have issues with John Ossoff enough that they will not vote for him. I mean, we can all make little nitpicky quibbles. He's not a fan of AIPAC. AIPAC's not a fan of his. It is interesting, by the way, that in his case and in Senator Bernie Sanders' case, a lot of other elected Jewish American candidates and politicians that they're not fans of AIPAC, and AIPAC's not a fan of theirs either. Interesting, right? That's something to note. Anyway, that's something that Mike Collins will have to overcome. It's the Ron Show.